Today is 23rd of April, 2020. This is the third installment of this series. Third installment of this series, April 23rd, 2020. And I've been working on the novel that I referred to in earlier videos. We looked through some of the coursework, and I have given out the first chapter to some of my friends or some people that I met through some groups. Got some overall pretty positive feedback. One person gave not so great feedback, or gave constructive feedback at least, which I thought was helpful, mentioning that I should probably work on showing and not telling so much, especially with the narration, which I'll have to look into a bit more. It's something I think all writers kind of aspire for, and especially if you're a bit more critical when you're reading things, that's something that you can spot really quickly. Something that I'm critical of when I've been reading other people's writing. So I'll have to learn how to balance that out. Maybe read some other books that are by authors that are really good. I was thinking of picking up a couple Stephen King novels that I've never read, since I liked his on-reading books so much. And something I've realized while going through this, as I think I mentioned before, is I have a really clear idea of the story towards the end, and I don't have so clear for the beginning. So I'm kind of now, I was getting stuck for a bit and slowing down. So I have decided to just write what comes to me really fast. I mean, I wrote the second and third chapter, so we're at about 10,000 words, and I would say they're not good. They're very rough, for sure, and I just want to speed through this, with as much quality and as much, doing a little bit of research in between. I can see and feel and build the character Victor up a bit more, which, if you probably know me, you know that it's loosely based on myself. It's an really interesting thing is that I have been trying to write this novel, since I was 15, because I struggled with the same things the main character struggled with. And now, so I have writing, about this from 20 years ago now, which is kind of wild. I'm trying to let it make me feel bad or disappoint me, but now as I'm starting to write it, and I've read through all the other stuff before, and one thing was really apparent: I was a really poor writer back then, which is fine. I was between 15 and 20 or 25 when I was doing a lot of this, little pieces here and there. But I look back on it also, and I see just somebody so much different, somebody so much younger. So now that it feels maybe a little bit easier to write, because I'm not writing about myself anymore. I'm writing about somebody else who just happened to have been me. I'm just basing it on that person who's now a stranger to me. And there's still elements of it I can relate to, so I think that's gonna help me get through the storyline. And then, I set my friend's auto cat feeder to have me just go meow, 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 feed me every time it goes off, which is 3 or 4 times a day. I can hear it, so that's why I'm laughing. And so now going into the 4th chapter, I am pleased. I'm enjoying the process, which is something that I kind of wasn't doing before. So I think that either the habit is developing better, or I just have a better feel for the pacing. And I'm kind of happy with that. Impatience is something that I've always struggled with. So we'll see how that goes. Some of the things I've done in my life have been very instant gratification wise, in terms of money and success. So this is a much different endeavor. Thinking about something that I might not ever succeed at, or excel. It's a little difficult, especially. I just can't do it for a few months or a year or something. I have to commit to it for a long period of time to give it a real go at it. So, I've got the other things in my life kind of on the go. They've been obviously slowed down since the coronavirus, which is making me a little anxious and unhappy in general. But all in all, I think I'll learn how to balance it with the rest of my life. It's funny because in Stephen King's novel, a book on writing, it talks about, doing 2,000 words a week or 2,000 words a day, and you're done a rough copy in like a month or something. And I thought, yeah, that's okay, that's easy, that's doable. No, it's not. And the other course said 500 words a day. It's like, oh, that's too little, but that's not the easiest to do always, especially when you're trying to develop a story at the same time and you get caught up or get stuck. Yeah. So the story, as we're going along here, I'm going to expand the first chapter later, talk more about the relationships and just about Victor in high school and maybe some earlier experiences. I'm playing around with the idea of having, the first section of the book just be like little stories around different different times in his life when he had panic attacks, around his mortality, and how, from even a very young age, he had a panic attack, say at 5 or 6, but didn't really understand what it was at the time. And as he got older, every time he had this panic attack around his mortality, he, justified it by kicking the can to the future self. You're 5 or 6, you don't even know what a panic attack is. You just feel shitty. And then you're 12, and, that was the first time I had a panic attack, and it was not a pleasant experience. But you're just like, I'm a kid, I'm 12, this is an adult problem. Deal with that later. I remember, I had mine, and that inspired me to read the Bible, King James edition that my mom had, Old Testament and New Testament, because I thought the solution would be in there, the answer. I'm sorry if anybody's religious who's watching this, but it was quite a letdown for me. I remember one really interesting experience I had, though, when I did that. I was in my old car. This must have been, so it must have been a bit later. I think I started reading it and then read it later. So I was like 16, and maybe I was reading it, driving in my car, and the windshield wipers, they weren't working properly. And then it just started to pour rain while I was going down the highway. And I was like, shit, if these windshield wipers don't work here, and they haven't been working, I'm gonna have to pull over and just wait for this to go, because I couldn't see anything. And then I flicked a little lever, and they started working, and just for a split second I was like, is that you, God? Was that you taking care of me? And that gave me that was a very interesting experience. The only time I've ever had that in my entire life. So it speaks something to the power of, I don't want to offend anybody, but what you put in your brain, what you read over and over, will start to create your reality. So, very interesting. Back on topic. So, the first chapter we're going to develop out a little bit more later, and we might jump from anxiety attack or just influential moment to influential moment through his development, and then maybe tie in some of the characters that might come in a little bit later as well. And then once that's all done, then the main story will start at some point. I think that's about the point where I'm getting to now, where he has a job, working for a big corporation that has a pharmaceutical division and a research and development division that he's working in. Frustrated with the pacing of it, he wants to push forward. And he's kind of put some papers out there and made some reports to make suggestions that are maybe a little bit bold, that his colleagues and his superiors don't like too much, but there's somebody watching above. The CEO of the corporation or the founder is interested in also doing these things. So it comes from, the scientists will have a different background where the pace of science has been a little bit slower and research takes time, and they're, risk averse when it comes to putting new treatments into people because of, the potential loss of life and, the ethics of changing people's DNA and things like that. But then you'll have Edward, who is the CEO, and he will be coming from a different perspective, profit driven. And he'll also have his own ulterior motive that he'll keep hidden from the audience for quite some time, but why he's so motivated for that. And he'll see Victor as a rising star and somebody he can, kind of, I guess, even use or abuse a little bit, his enthusiasm and his risk taking. So that's going to be the next part, and that kind of trails off the rest of the story. I guess maybe after this meeting and things change, there'll be maybe one more jump in time till he gets to the point where he's ready to change himself, to experiment on himself with what they've been doing. And then from there, it kind of just goes in one period. It won't be jumping days or weeks. It won't be jumping months or years. Maybe a couple days in between, but it'll just play out the rest of the story. And I'm very excited for that. So, I think that's it. These videos aren't that great yet. Maybe I can do something better. About 10 minutes. Doubt anybody will watch them. But yeah, maybe next time I'll have my beard trimmed, my hair cut a little bit. So I hope the audio turned out well. Thanks for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted. Cheers.